Hello friends, we are here today in the book of Philemon. This is the first and the last chapter. There's only one chapter in the book of Philemon. And I want to say that this is a very special book to me, because this is the first book of the Bible that I've ever read from beginning to end. Because it's so small. I heard somebody else teach on it, and it only took them, 20 minutes, and I was thinking, I bet I could read that whole book, and I did, and I really enjoyed it. So then after that, I went and found all the other small books that I could find, and I read them as well. But the book of Philemon is more than just a small book that doesn't have very much content in it. It's a great book, and it's really fun to read too, because there's a story behind it. You just get from this letter a sense of something that's really happened. So rather than going verse by verse through this one, I'm going to try and just give you the backstory, and then you can take 5 minutes and read it yourself. So, the story is about a man named, and you might think it's about a man named Philemon, but it's not. It's not about Paul either. It's about somebody else named Oneimus. This story has two major themes. One is freedom, and the other is forgiveness, and how they work together. So, you have this man, Oneimus, and we don't know much about him, but we know that he longed to be free. And he had a master, and his name was Philemon. And Oneimus wanted to be free so badly that he left everything he knew. He left the safety of the law by breaking it and leaving him, and all the repercussions that could come from that. This guy was a guy with a one-track mind, and this one-track mind was thinking freedom. I want freedom. I don't want to be a slave anymore. And so he runs away to the place where he thinks nobody would ever find him. He goes to Rome. There's a certain slavery in being free, and there's a certain type of freedom in being a slave. Because when you're a slave, or at least a first century slave, you know where your food was coming from. You knew what you were going to do in a day. You knew what your job was. And you knew where you were going to sleep at night. But when you run away, you don't know where you're going to sleep at night. You don't know how you're going to survive a week from now. You don't have the protection. And so here's Oneimus in a place that he does not know. And he's thinking, I'm free, and yet I don't feel free. But this is the most amazing part to me, is that he sees the Apostle Paul, a man in chains, a man who is, by all rights, less free than he is. He can't do anything. He can't even work. Oneimus sees this man in chains, and even though his one-track mind is saying freedom, he sees Paul and sees that's a man who's free. So what does he do? He starts serving Paul, and eventually he becomes a Christian. Now, this is the most amazing thing to me. He wants to be free, so he serves Paul, the man who can lead him to true freedom. And then Paul, after a while, says, who is your master? And he says, Philemon, in Colossae. And so he writes this letter, and he writes the book of Colossians, and he sends him home. Sends him home a free man. And he even tells Philemon, he says, receive him not as a slave, but as a brother. And if he has stolen anything from you, I will pay it back. I just want you to remember that you owe me your very life. So, it's a pretty bold thing to ask. He's a runaway slave. When he's coming back, when he's delivering this letter, Philemon has every right to throw him in jail, maybe even to put him to death. He has every right to do that, but he's saying, I don't just want you to do that. I want you to receive him back, not as a slave, but as a brother. Now this means not just a brother in Christ, but he says, not as a slave. So here he wants to forgive him, but not just forgive him, but put him in a place of righteousness. He wants him to elevate him higher than he was before. And he says, receive him as if you would receive me. What I think is amazing about this book is that is what God has done to us. You know, this is very much a picture of our relationship with God. You know, we have run away. We have stolen from God. And Jesus lets us go back. And we can come back not as someone who is dying, even though we deserve death. But he brings us up and gives us the right to be sons of God. So if you want that freedom, go to Jesus. You get the freedom and be part of the family of God. So that is the book of Philemon. Hope you have a great day. Bye.